Hi guys, this is Ranjit and this is going to be a very different kind of video, not a popular opinion, but I thought I should talk about this one. And I know some people or brands might get pissed off with this one, but I think so I need to share this. And as the title says, and I'm going to look at some of the notes that I've created here on my laptop, guys. As the title says, flagship smartphones are not that practical and beyond the hype. And this is specifically for Android smartphones. And guys, if you have access to the topmost Android phones and everything, but still I would say last year I enjoyed using a lot of mid-range Android phones rather than the flagships. And the problem is that lately from last year onwards, what I have seen is many of the flagship Android smartphone chips are simply not that great. In fact, they heat up a lot. The battery life is not that good. Just for the namesake, you're getting a flagship chipset, but the battery life is not good. The usability because of the heating issues are not that good. So flagship smartphone chips have become inefficient lately. Even if we talk about last year, the Snapdragon 888, which was the flagship from Qualcomm, was simply not that great. It had heating issues. In fact, one of the few new smartphones that came with that chip, that was the OnePlus 9 Pro, had severe heating issues. And if you see my review also, I said that it was just not that great. Battery life was not good, had heating issues. In fact, after my review, many people figured out that the performance of that smartphone because of the chip heating issues was so bad that Qualcomm was throttling the performance, and the performance was like a 7X series chip. And I also say that I was not happy with that. And even the Exynos 2100 initially when it came had some heating issues and stuff like that. Eventually they improved it. I'm currently testing the S21 FE. This one does not heat that much, I would say. I think so they must have played around with the frequencies and stuff. But nevertheless, to say that the flagship smart chips that started coming from last year was simply not that great. Unlike, I would say, I like the Snapdragon 865, that was good. In fact, last year, if you talk about flagship chips from Qualcomm, I preferred smartphones with the Snapdragon 870 rather than the Snapdragon 888. In fact, many of the gaming smartphones also that came with the Snapdragon 888, those have heavy, vapor cooling, extra layers of graphite, etc. also had heating issues. In fact, I know of one brand which was planning to launch a smartphone in India with the Snapdragon 888, just decided not to launch it because the battery life and it had a lot of heating issues. It was that bad. So again, even the Snapdragon 888 was simply not that good. Just Qualcomm releasing chips for the namesake of it, because with the flagship chips they can charge a lot. And I feel for most users, a mid-range smartphone chip might be more practical. And to give you a very crude example to give you an idea about it, think of a flagship processor like a 1000cc bike, and you know that not everybody requires a 1000cc bike. 95%, 99% of the people will not require a 1000cc bike because the mileage on those bikes is pathetic. By mileage, you could say that's the battery life on a smartphone. Comparable, you'd say it's pathetic. Also, in city traffic, these very high cc bikes heat up a lot. So they're simply not that practical. And in fact, I know quite a few of my friends have super bikes, that liter class 1200cc bikes, but they also have another bike that's a normal bike that they use for everyday use. So it's only used on weekends. So you could say the flagship processors, yes, they have become very fast or whatever, but they are now become like a super bike, because in everyday usage, most of these flagship smartphones do not get good battery life and also have heating issues, quite a bit of heating issues. And it's not like the heating issues are only then when you stress the phone completely, like running benchmark. Of course it will do, but even in normal day-to-day activities, you might be multitasking with like 4 or 5 apps. In those aspects also it heats up. So that's the reality. So not everybody requires the cutting-edge flagship smartphones, I feel. And last year, luckily from last 1.5 years, I've seen that a lot of mid-range smartphones, mid-range chips, I have to say, have become very, very good actually, and very practical. I would say for normal users, 90% of the users, what do you need? You need a decent enough chip that is not sluggish. In daily operations, you should not see any lag. And also it should get very good battery life. If you get that combination, that's a very good chipset for 95% of the users. And a lot of mid-range smartphones get that. And because it does not heat up that much, the battery life is also very, very good. In fact, I would say these mid-range chips that have a 5000 milliamp hour battery, let's say it's the Snapdragon 778, which I feel is the best chip released by Qualcomm last year. It's not the Snapdragon 888 or even the 870, the 778, because it's so power efficient and it does not heat up a lot, and in fact the day-to-day performance was very good. In fact, if you have seen my review of the Galaxy M52, I raved about this phone, and I would say 80% credit goes to the Snapdragon 778. It's that good of a chip. And in fact, I used this smartphone for the last 3 weeks. Now just I've shifted to the S21 FE because I'm testing it. And I was so happy with this smartphone because easily 2+ days of battery life. And in day-to-day usage, I did not feel any lag or anything. That way, the performance was not like I was having a significantly less performance rather than using the Fold with the Snapdragon 888. So you get it. This chip was good enough. In fact, not only the 778 was a fabulous chip. In fact, apart from the Samsung M52, I even used some other smartphones with the Snapdragon 778 and the same results. Battery life, fabulous. Almost 2 days of battery life and no heating in regular usage. So you put it in your pants, it doesn't get warm. So that's actually good. Apart from that, I would say if you talk about MediaTek, also Dimensity, they released the Dimensity series. Here I like the Dimensity 800, fabulous battery life I was getting with that chipset. Even this Dimensity 820 is very good, and to a certain extent I would say even the Dimensity 900 was a very good chip. Coming to Qualcomm, I would say the best chips, as I've told you, that they released in 2021, the Snapdragon 778 comes at the top if you want the best performance, best battery life. Overall great chip, 778. But again, even on their budget range, mid-range range, the new Snapdragon 695 that came with the Moto G71 is a fabulous chip. And even the Snapdragon 480 Plus, that is the 5G one, is actually a really good chip. So that brings me to find that you really do not need the flagship chip these days. Even a good mid-range chipset will give you actually far better experience. In fact, with these mid-range smartphones, I can get about full 2 days worth of battery life, but with the flagships, I have to charge it every day. That's the difference. In fact, I'm testing, this is the S21 FE, which comes with the Exynos 2100. Here I'm getting a battery life of about 5 to 5.5 hours of SOT with a typical full day of usage. But with the Snapdragon 778, with similar usage, I was getting 2 days of battery life. And in terms of SOT, I was getting anywhere from 8.5 to about 10 hours of SOT. It's almost double. And in fact, this was not a slow phone or anything like that. But again, we are obsessed, I would say, in getting the fastest chipset because we feel getting let down. But the fact is that you're not getting let down. These days, at least on the Android smartphones, the flagship chips are simply not that well optimized, I would say. Hence, battery life is not that great. And heating is a real issue. Now it's even with the Snapdragon. Earlier, it was only the Exynos, but the new Snapdragons, also the flagships, are having the heating issues. I would say many of you might argue that brands do not release mid-range smartphone with all the bells and whistles, and to a certain extent it is true, but I would also blame we as reviewers also, we get apprehensive when a brand releases a good mid-range smartphone, a premium mid-range smartphone, you could say, that has all the bells and whistles, but because of the premiumness, you want OIS, you want great camera, you want water resistance, you want stereo speakers, the cost increases, obviously, compared to a regular mid-range smartphone. So we as reviewers also dismiss that. For example, the cousin of this one, the M52, was the what's the Samsung Galaxy A52s 5G, and when it came to the market, it was launched at 38,000. And when Samsung asked me, do you want to review this? I said, I simply do not want to review this smartphone because at 37 or 38,000 they launched it. I said it's simply overpriced. So we as reviewers also have that bias. Okay, it's coming with a mid-range chipset, that is the Snapdragon 778, and it's priced at 37 or 38,000. We will not review it. We also have that bias. So again, it's even easier for brands to sell a smartphone with a flagship chipset and charge you twice. It's easier. But let's say they build a great mid-range smartphone with all the bells and whistles that you want. Let's say a great camera, OIS, water resistance, stereo speakers, and wireless charging, etc. But Are we as consumers ready to pay that? We just discounted seeing the chipset that's a mid-range chipset. But in fact, the mid-range chipset suits it perfectly. It gives you better battery life. It does not have heating issues. But even brands don't want to do that. They don't want to give everything in the mid-range smartphone, because let's say a similar smartphone, a good mid-range smartphone they have created with all the bells and whistles, let's say with the Snapdragon 778 chipset. It's a 5G, supports all the 12, 13 bands of 5G. It's priced at 35,000. We as consumers will be apprehensive. Oh, it's just a mid-range chipset and it's costing 35,000. But let's say it's the same configuration. Let's say it's the similar smartphone with OIS, stereo speakers, blah, 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 all the flagship, with the flagship chipset. Let's say if it's priced at even 70,000, let's say it comes with the Snapdragon 888 or whatever, it's at 70,000. We as consumers will be ready to pay for that. That's the reality, guys, because we are so obsessed that thinking that if it has the the flagship processor, it will be best in everything. But the reality is very different these days. The flagship processors heat quite a bit. The battery life is not that good, and brands also want to do that. They don't want to sell you the best smartphone at a mid-range price point. Let's say they created this ideal mid-range smartphone for 35,000 with the Snapdragon 778. We know for a fact that the 778 is a very capable and overall good chipset. At 35,000, I feel it's a good deal. But I told you, I also had a bias. I declined reviewing the A52s 5G, but now I look at it, it's available for 32, 33,000. It's a great smartphone because it gets a lot of things right. It has OIS. The cameras are good. It has water resistant stereo speakers also, if I recall. So overall, it was a good package. But me as a reviewer, seeing the initial price, I just said Samsung, sorry, I'm not going to review it. See, I also have that bias. So, and brands don't want to sell a mid-range smartphone. Let's say it's a mid-range smartphone for 35,000. A brand might be getting a profit of just about 5,000, 6,000 rupees on this smartphone. Let's say a similar smartphone, it's with the flagship chipset, Snapdragon 888 or whatever. They can easily price it at 70,000. Let's say the chipset difference and let's say the build quality is slightly better. So the brand has to, let's say, spend about 8 or 9,000 extra to manufacture that smartphone because the flagship chipset is expensive. They improve the build quality also, whatever, blah, blah. But look at the price difference. This is worth 35,000. That is for 70,000. So it's double the price of that smartphone. Okay. Though the brand is... So the brand is also happy selling you a flagship smartphone at that price point because the profit margin is a lot higher. They get 25,000 rupees as profit margins on flagship, but rather on a mid-range smartphone, they might get a profit margin of just 5,000-6,000 rupees. And that's a fact. So even brands don't want you to sell a really good mid-range smartphone with all the bells and whistles. And that's the fact. And guys, so whenever you're just trying to go with the hype of that fear of missing out, yes, I want the latest flagship chipset or whatever, the latest smartphone with the flagship chipset, think about it. Do you really need that? Maybe a mid-range smartphone will suffice you better if you're a regular user, because definitely it will give you better battery life and also it won't have the heating issues. And in day-to-day performance, these mid-range chipsets have become so good that you won't notice the performance drop or something. Even for gaming, most of the mid-range chipsets are actually very good and in fact come with Snapdragon Elite Gaming certification or whatever like that. And this specific year in 2022, guys, just be aware of flagship Android smartphones coming with the latest flagship chips, because even from what we are hearing right now, the Snapdragon's latest Snapdragon 8 Generation 1 is also having quite a bit of heating issues. So be aware of that. And in fact, Samsung was going to announce this Exynos 2200 yesterday, but they scrapped it completely. I don't know why, but they scrapped it completely. So we don't know. I don't think so. The Snapdragon, the Exynos 2200 will be coming, and looks like the Samsung S22 series will now come with the Snapdragon series. I would applaud Samsung for doing that. Let's say the Exynos 2200 was simply not that great in terms of heating or battery life or GPU performance. Instead of just shoving that chipset on all of us, they took the back seat. Maybe it will be introduced later on when they fix it after 6-8 months. But again, be careful. careful. There is the new Dimensity 9000 also, that is the new flagship from MediaTek. We don't know if that one also has heating issues, but this year again looks like the flagship Android smartphones might be having the heating issues, and because of the heating issues also the battery life takes a backseat. So anyways guys, this was a video, just wanted to let you guys know about my raw thoughts about this. I know many of you will hate me about that, but this is the truth. Anyways guys, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. This is Ranjit and I hope to see you in my next video. Take care guys.